America hit the 1890s like a drunk hitting a staircase. Everything was moving. Railroads cut across the country. Factories coughed smoke into the sky. Cities swelled with workers who arrived looking for wages and usually found 12-hour shifts, broken fingers, filthy rooms, and somebody richer than them explaining how lucky they were to have a job. They called it progress. Progress is a nice word when you own the factory. Rockefeller had oil. Carnegie had steel. Morgan had money. Vanderbilt had railroads. These men helped build the machinery of modern America, and they made fortunes large enough to embarrass kings. They also understood something simple. If you control the game, you don't need luck. The Sherman Antitrust Act arrived in 1890 because people had begun noticing that competition gets difficult when one man owns half the board. Congress passed the law. The trusts kept breathing. Meanwhile, workers fed the machine. Long hours, low wages, steel gears that did not care whether your hand was still attached. Eventually, people got angry. They usually do in situations like this. In 1894, workers at the Pullman Company went on strike after wages were cut while living costs remained high. Railroad traffic stalled. The federal government sent troops. Eventually, the strike ended. The lesson was easy enough to understand. Your employer owned the company. Part of that lesson one would find, sometimes he owned your house, and that sometimes the government brought soldiers. Negotiation becomes an interesting word under those circumstances. Farmers were getting squeezed too. Crop prices dropped. Railroad companies charged freight rates. Banks collected debts. Farms disappeared into foreclosure. So farmers got political. The populace rose out of that anger, carrying ideas about railroad regulation, banking reform, and silver currency. William Jennings Bryan became their great voice. Bryan could stand before a crowd and make monetary policy sound like Judgment Day. He argued that expanding silver currency would increase the money supply and help indebted farmers. His opponents said it would create inflation and economic chaos. People argued, bankers worried, farmers listened. Then there was, of course, the wrinkle of race, which made its way into every conversation. In 1896, the Supreme Court handed down Plessy v. Ferguson and approved the doctrine of separate but equal. The phrase looked respectable on paper. The South made sure the reality was something else. Segregation hardened into law. Black Americans faced blocked voting rights, separate schools, restricted public spaces, intimidation, and violence. Lynchings increased. Federal protection had faded with Reconstruction. A government that had once sent armies south to destroy slavery increasingly watched from Washington while terror became part of everyday life. Then, the newspapers discovered that outrage sold copies. William Randolph Hearst and Joseph Pulitzer competed for readers with enormous headlines, dramatic stories, crime, scandal, rumors, and anything else that might make somebody hand over a penny. Truth sometimes survived the process. In 1898, the USS Maine exploded in Havana Harbor. Nobody knew exactly what had happened. That did not stop the headlines. Remember the Maine! War fever spread. Soon, the United States was fighting Spain in Cuba, Puerto Rico, and the Philippines. America had spent most of the century pushing west. Now it started looking overseas. Empire had entered the room. That is the United States during the 1890s. Factories roaring. Workers striking. Farmers drowning in debt. Black Americans being shoved under segregation. Newspapers screaming. Rich men getting richer. Politicians promising salvation. And somewhere beneath all of it was the old American argument about freedom. Who gets it? Who pays for it? Who owns the building where the argument takes place? The century ended. The machinery kept running. A lot of these fights, as you will see, did too.